Good morning, security gang. James Azar here, and thank you for tuning into the CyberHub Podcast. Today, we're breaking down the newly released U.S. cyber strategy, Iranian hackers targeting critical infrastructure, Russian intelligence going after Signal and WhatsApp users, a breach affecting Ericsson in the U.S., and active exploitation of Rockwell ICS vulnerability on this morning's show, which is going to highlight a theme we've been discussing for quite some time over the last few weeks: the intersection of geopolitics, infrastructure security, and identity-based attacks. We're seeing new U.S. cyber policy directions, escalating Iranian and Russian cyber activity, supply chain compromises in developer ecosystems, and continued targeting of communication platforms. And that's just on today's show, where cyber conflict is no longer theoretical. It's layered into national strategy, corporate security posture, and everyday communication platforms. And that's for today's show. I hope you're ready. You're buckled in, ready to go. Episode 1074. It's Tuesday, March 10th, 2026. I've got my double espresso, y'all. Look at that beautiful line of foam right there. And if you could see just the smoke coming out of this hot espresso, it would just make you proud. Coffee cup cheers, y'all. This is a Lavazza coffee. It's really good. It's actually medium roast, and it's fantastic. It'll get us through today's show. So let's dive right in this morning. CyberHubPodcast.com, by the way, is where you'll find all of the latest content, and exclusive content is only available there, but you can also find us on YouTube and your favorite social media platforms. And now we go to the White House, 1600 Pennsylvania, where President Donald J. Trump and the Trump administration released its new cybersecurity strategy, emphasizing deregulation, stronger private sector partnerships, and a shift towards a deterrence-based cyber defense. The strategy is signaling a departure from regulatory-heavy models and instead is focusing on market-driven security innovation, critical infrastructure protection, and stronger offensive cyber capabilities. This is correlating with some earlier executive actions taken by the president that we've discussed around secure software development requirements and national cyber resilience planning. What's notable in this one is the emphasis on empowering industry rather than expanding federal mandates. Now, I can hear the risk that some of you talk about: uneven cybersecurity maturity across industries if regulatory baselines are weakened. I have a pushback to that, which is I've yet to find any sort of cyber regulation anywhere on the planet, and I've looked, that has eliminated or reduced cyber threat in any sort of significant way, fashion, or form. I haven't found it. And if you have, put it in the comments. Let me know. I'd love to hear it. I haven't seen it. So open my eyes. What I have seen, though, is that if we turn cybersecurity and take it away from regulation and turn it into business impact and winning business by having a good cybersecurity program, by winning over customers, that it becomes a selling advantage, then maybe that's better. Maybe the partnership between public and private needs to be on that and not on more policy. And I already hear a panel I'll be on later this week, and I'll hear a lot of people say, well, you know, the government's really disappointing with regulation. We don't need regulation to be good cybersecurity practitioners. Yes, it's going to be a little bit tougher to sell a cybersecurity program to the business, but all that means is that we have to shift our mindset from being a cost center to being a sales-driven center. And the good systems already know how to do that. The Tim Callahan's at Aflac and the many others. Pete Cronus, when he was at Warner, talked about this extensively. Emily Heath, when she was at United, talked about this. How do we turn a cyber program from a cost center to a business-driven enterprise? And this is how we do it, folks. This is how we do it. We look at the business and we empower it. We empower it by saying that cyber is now an advantage. Our investment in cyber is our competitive advantage. Nothing else. That's where it lies. I like this strategy a little bit better because all the other ones, even Trump 1.0, back in 2017, 2018, when they released their cyber strategy, was I thought vanilla. President Biden's was pretty much President Obama's, and none of those did anything to change the status quo of cyber. So maybe it's time we try something new. It makes us uncomfortable. It's going to make us uneasy, but that's what new is. Give it a shot. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And if I'm right, I'm right. If you're right, you're right. And if you're wrong, then you're wrong. but we got to try something. The status quo just isn't working. They want to impose costs on bad actors. This is coming from Shane Cairncross, who's the cyber czar in the White House. It's a 4-page document. It's calling for cyber actions. Go read it. It's really, really good. It's pledging to cut down on regulations, better protect federal networks, make security a focus of AI innovation, create pilot programs to build out the cyber workforce, all things we need. All right. Operation Epic Fury enters day 12. Researchers are now warning that Iranian-linked attackers are actively targeting U.S. critical infrastructure organizations. We talked about it yesterday on the show. These campaigns are focused primarily on reconnaissance and credential harvesting rather than any sort of type of destructive or disruptive activity. This is aligning closely with some previous reporting around Iranian cyber posture during this escalation period. Iran has historically tried to use cyber operations to position itself within networks for potential future disruption rather than any sort of immediate attack. However, as reported on yesterday's show, Israel did target their IRGC and some of the cyber APT housing headquarters, blowing that in the smithereens. Some of their cyber infrastructure has been paralyzed by activities done by the NSA, U.S. Cyber Command, 8200, Mossad, and others. So we'll see if their activity actually increases. I think what we're seeing now is kind of the offshoots, the hacktivists that support Iran on college campuses. I'm just kidding, not on college campuses, but across the globe, primarily in some of the final APTs that are still around. And it's only a matter of time before they're tracked and potentially having their infrastructure completely destroyed by kinetic warfare. So you should be kind of deploying continuous credential monitoring. You should be working with your ISAC or CISA or FBI to get the TTPs and IOCs, work with your MSSPs and your security partners, your MDRs, to make sure that you're getting all of the Iranians, IOCs, and TTPs, and you're blocking them in your environment if you're in one of the industries they are targeting. In more Iran news, folks, this story on X caught my attention. Astra RCE is the one you should look at. The Cloudsy, which is now turning out to be a essentially shell for Iran for hosting the kind of malicious activities that are done across multiple APTs and not just Iranians. It's owned by a person by the name of Hanan Nuzari, who describes himself as a noob on the internet, but that's just his X bio right next to the part where he identifies himself as the founder of Cloudsy. Halcyon did a whole investigation back in August of 2023, pulling back the curtain on their operations. They're not some scrappy startup, but rather they are a front company for the Iranian regime called ABR NOC, which is headquartered in Fatimi Square in Tehran. The companies share identical logos. Some of the employees are identical. They have blogs that are primarily, kind of written and so forth. They've got various online profiles, put them in New Zealand, the UAE, and elsewhere. The person reached there. Naziri says that he's not in Iran himself, but he didn't say where he was. To become a customer, you only need one thing: a working email address. They don't ask for a government ID, no phone verification, no KYC. Payments are only made by Bitcoin and Ethereum. And you can also use Monero, Dash, or Zcash if you want to be really, really private. If you abuse their system, no worry, they're never going to cancel you. They're just going to charge you more money. And that's okay if you're making money using their system. Crypto, bad abuse report, a client list that names some of the world's greatest APTs on there and some of the more destructive ransomware gangs. Halcyon looked into this, found these guys. Again, the link is in the show notes. Go check this out. And make sure you're blocking some of the information there as well from your environment. Dutch intelligence agencies are now warning that the Russian government hackers are actively targeting Signal and WhatsApp users. The focus remains, it appears to be, on compromising accounts or exploiting devices connected to these messaging apps. This is reflecting a broader shift we've seen in espionage operations, that instead of targeting networks directly, they're going after the communication platforms themselves that are used by some of their target individuals. Now, as we've discussed, mobile devices and messaging platforms have become key espionage targets for nation-state actors, where they try to compromise encrypted communication through device-level attacks, which means you should be enforcing mobile device security policies with mandatory OS patching and device encryption. Show value in your security program. Be proactive. Don't ask yourself, no one would ever do that to us, until they do. So keep that there as well.
There is a security breach.
All right, we'll move to Ericsson and some security breaches here, disclosing a U.S. data breach tied to the U.S. to the U.S. entity of Ericsson that compromised a service provider. The breach exposed some internal company information, but did not appear to impact some of their core telecom infrastructure. Another example of third-party risk patterns that we've seen repeated across the industries, where attackers are targeting vendors instead of the primary organization and thus gaining a foothold on the primary organization. They say that the compromised provider has not yet found evidence that the data has been misused since the breach, with the risk being supply chain compromises exposing corporate data through third-party providers. To mitigate this one, we should require security audits and breach notification clauses in vendor contracts to make sure you get yourself covered there as well. Rockwell Automation, for their end, are experiencing a resurgence of an old CVE 2021 22681, where it's now being actively exploited in real world attacks. Rockwell products are widely used across manufacturing and energy sectors, meaning exploitation could impact operational technology environments. And this, again, is fitting a pattern we've been watching here on the show, where attackers are increasingly focusing on ICS and OT vulnerabilities, especially in this tense geopolitical moment. Any unauthorized access to ICS systems that manage physical infrastructure is risky and could have catastrophic impact. To do so, isolate industrial control networks from corporate IT environments using strict network segmentation. Hide your OT networks behind any sort of device. You can look at devices like Cloak, KLOCH. By the way, you should go check them out. They'll actually hide anything behind their device, so you can put them right behind your firewall, and an attacker would see nothing and be able to take advantage of nothing there. So go check them out. If you're in the OT space and you're looking for another solution to harden your environment, Cloak would probably be that there as well. Shiny Hunters is claiming that they're actively conducting data theft attacks against Salesforce Aura environments. Aura is part of Salesforce's web framework, and exploitation would allow attackers to access sensitive CRM data. This is following a broader trend of Shiny Hunters, where they target business SaaS platforms containing high value customer data, then try to publicize it and blackmail and extort those companies for the data so they don't publish it. Theft of customer data does establish large scale fraud and social engineering risks there. You should be enforcing strict API access controls and monitoring within your CRM platforms. So NPM back in the news here. Sorry, what happened here? Sorry, folks. That's kind of off. So researchers discovering more OpenClaw issues with NPM. It's disguised as a legitimate developer tool, but once installed, it does allow attackers to steal credentials and system data. This fits the growing pattern of supply chain attacks targeting developer ecosystem, something we've seen repeatedly across NPM, PyPI, and GitHub, with the risk being developer workstation compromise leading to production system access. To mitigate this one, implement software dependency scanning within your development pipelines and tighten it in again. And they're still trying to take advantage of OpenClaw there. So keep that in mind and keep it out of your corporate environments if you can for now. Attackers are using Microsoft Teams messages to deliver phishing links and malware payloads to employees. Because Teams is an internal collaboration tool, users are often less suspicious of messages they receive there. We've seen this tactic rise recently as attackers move away from traditional email phishing towards internal messaging platforms. And again, these platforms are highly trusted, so when abused for malware delivery, they're highly successful. You should be deploying phishing detection controls for collaboration platforms like Teams or Slack within your environment. In other news, the Senate finally did its job and voted to move to a full floor vote by 68 to 28, limiting the debate on Army Lieutenant General Joshua Reed, who will be taking over for NSA and Cyber Command, shutting down Ron Wyden's clown show that he's been doing for the last year in form of resistance, because nothing is ever good enough for a guy from Oregon. All right. Leadership in these organizations is critical, especially given this time frame. Apparently 68 people in the Senate looked at this and said, you know what, put politics aside. We need to get someone in there, especially given the current geopolitical landscape. So there's strong bipartisan support for Rudd, according to Armed Services Committee Chairperson Roger Wicker of Mississippi. So he'll likely get confirmed here in the next week. And take his rightful role at NSA and Cyber Command, leading both agencies at this time, and what work they've been doing in Iran. I can't wait to share some of that when we are able to. All right, the FBI issuing a warning about phishing campaigns impersonating city and county officials. Attackers are sending emails appearing to come from municipal leaders in order to trick recipients into opening malicious attachments. They're targeting businesses and citizens. That's why they're going after local municipalities, because they're widely trusted by both. So you want to make sure you do some education within your business on this type of attack, and make sure your employees and some of your smaller companies in your organization understand this and keep a tight eye on it as well. And finally, in good guys prevail here, a Ghanaian national has pled guilty to a large-scale cyber fraud scheme using romance scam and business email compromise that was used to steal more than $100 million from victims. The man was extradited to the U.S. Derek Von Yuba, also known as Van, has pled guilty in the Southern District of New York, according to U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton. He's going to be paying back nearly a little over $10 million in restitution and forfeiture. He's looking at a 20-year sentence in prison. So there's that there as well. And again, romance scams, something we can all help by just speaking to our counterparts. And when something seems off, let them know. You might be being taken advantage of, buddy, or friend. Let me help you with that as well. That's it for our show this morning, folks. You obviously know there's been a lot to talk about here, but the most important thing is keep your programs tight, provide value, and do the basics. And if you do the basics, you'll be you'll make yourself more resilient in light of these attacks. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe, follow, share, like, and comment. Follow us at cyberhubpodcast.com. Get a written version of today's episode directly in your inbox shortly after this episode airs. Until then, have a great rest of your day. We'll be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, with the latest. Most importantly, stay cyber.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.